So today I want to alter this metal water canister. It's got the indent on that side, so I think it was meant to be a hip flask. I'm just going to sand it whilst impasto and gesso stick to things quite well. I don't think there's any harm in also sanding things just to give a wee bit extra purchase. Okay, so there's sort of gritty bits on it now, so I'll just wipe those away so that I don't paint them in with the gesso. So I have a rough idea of what I want to do with it today, but whether it turns out the way I've got imagined in my head, I do not know. And I haven't quite decided what tissue paper or stencils and things I want to use, but I've kind of narrowed it down to a couple. I've got the tissue paper that has the moons on it, which I thought would go quite nice with the numbers stencil, both by Finnabar, and kind of fancy having this vintage lady, and the stencil I think that would go quite well with that is this sort of berries one. I'm pretty sure I'll go with that lady and that stencil. So my first step, just to get some texture on the canister, is to use the modelling paste through the stencil. It probably won't go on very well because this canister is very rounded, but I'm not really bothered about how accurate the texture is. I just want something on there that's a wee bit of a pattern. So I'm just feeding it through kind of roughly, making a bit of a mess, to be honest. As I say, it's not important for the finished product. It probably won't even be seen. I just need a little bit of texture. And I am going to go and wash the stencil right away and be right back. Okay. So I'm going to try the modelling paste before I start gessoing. I say that, I've got only a little bit of time here to make this video, so it's not going to be dry, but I highly recommend that you make sure yours is dry if you're doing something similar before putting the gesso on, because otherwise you're just going to start making smudgy white messes. It's close. I'm going to plough on black gesso. It's my first coat. I'm going to do a couple of thin coats rather than one big thick coat, and just make sure that I get the gesso in between all the bumps in that texture that I put on. And I'm going to speed the video up because there's absolutely no point in you watching me paint this twice in black gesso. Be right back. Okay, so that's it done, and the texture paste is nearly dry. I'm going to use this now. It's Vaseline or petroleum jelly. I don't know what it would be called in other countries. You'll maybe know. It's thick and oily, and I'm just going to dab it on randomly in some places. some of you may know this technique already for distressing. If you don't, then all will be revealed in further stages. So don't be too sparing with it. You want to put quite heavy blobs on. The technique won't work if you're too sparing with it. So here is how it's looking. I'm going to use this nice mint green and pastel paint now. It's a lovely thick sticky paint, but also it's got a beautiful matte and chalky kind of finish. It's got a nice soft pastel-y vintage feel too. So I'm just going to paint that right over all of the canister, including going right over the Vaseline. Don't try and avoid it. Just thickly paint everything on. Again, it'll probably take a couple of coats, and rather than watch that in real time, let's speed it up. So here it is. I've given it a couple of coats, and the Vaseline and everything is all covered up. So I'm taking a wet baby wipe. I'm very gently I'm wiping over the top of the green paint. I can't remember exactly where all the Vaseline blobs were, but they should reveal themselves by just gently coming away. Again, I've speeded up the video so that you don't have to see that in slow motion. But just keep gently going over it with the wet cloth, and the places where the Vaseline is will reveal themselves and you'll start to see black. And it gives a sort of feel of chipped enamel or chipped paint, showing sort of like a cast iron underneath. And this is what it looks like when I'm done. And I want to attach the tissue paper now. I just want that lady, her face. So I'm going to use a wet paintbrush just with water and draw around it. A lot of you'll know it's really hard to tear tissue paper in a controlled manner. And I don't want to just cut it, because the straight cut lines are harder to blend in than soft torn lines. I prefer to have it torn. So I'm just doing a rough cut out of it just now. I probably will have to make it smaller once I get it over to the canister and decide exactly how much of it I want to be seen. And to glue the tissue paper on, I'm going to use soft gel. I would have preferred matte, but I used the last of the matte gel last week and I forgot to order more. So I'm just going to use the gloss gel. And once that's dry, I can go over it with clear gesso to get rid of the shine. Tear off the extra. There's a bit much of it. You won't be able to see some of that black Vaseline distressing that I've done with all that tissue. When you're tearing it, be sure and keep your fingers tight down on the bits you don't want to tear, or it'll all just come away. So just be gentle with it. A coat of gel medium underneath, place it on, and some gel medium over the top. Tear off the excess. There'll soon be nothing left. Now I want to kind of blend her in a bit more. So I'm going to go back to using the green and pastel paint and paint around her, so that it's mostly just her face that's left behind. That'll take a couple of coats, and I just want to do it softly. I don't want to be too heavy-handed with it. And I'll probably just use my finger to blend in the edges a little bit so that they're not too harsh. Okay, I'm going to do the clear gesso now, because her face is very shiny compared to everything else, which is nice and chalky and matte looking. Just one coat will probably be enough. There we go. We'll just dry it off. And I'm going to add some embellishments. I'm going to be using some of Finnabar's Mechanicals, metal flowers and leaves. Not many, just a few, because as a steampunk, I'll probably still will use this as a hip flask and have it attached to a belt. So I don't want loads and loads of flowers and things that are going to keep catching on everything. Just a few. I'm attaching them with heavy body gel because, as I say, I will be using this flask and I want something that I know is really going to hold the elements on. You may have noticed that I started without a hand brace on at the start of the video, but unfortunately I wasn't really able to work like that. I didn't want to get paint on it, but the reality is there's too much paint. So the hand brace is on, and it's looking a nice shade of green in places along with that canister. I've made a right mess of it. So there we go, that's my elements chosen and glued on. I'm just using the heat gun to kind of dry it so they stay in place. And again, because I'm doing it for the video, they're not properly dry, but I highly recommend you let yours dry properly before going to the next stage. I didn't. I'm just going to keep muddling through and using a very small brush, paint my metal elements with the black gesso. I'm going to start making them blend in with the rest of the canister, hopefully. You don't have to be too precious and particular. You don't have to cover it all, and you don't have to worry too much if little bits of it get on the canister, because it's kind of adds to the look rather than detracts from it. And with a small enough brush, you shouldn't make too much mess. But we want to definitely make sure that the black gesso is dry before you go on to the next stage, because when I add the green impasto, you don't want the black getting smudged into it. So make sure you take the heat gun over it and dry it properly. The bonus is that gesso does dry quite quickly. I always think that using the heat gun and on a video, when you've speeded up the video, it looks quite funny. I wasn't moving my hand that fast, honestly. Okay, so back to the nice mint green impasto, which is not showing up that well because I've also using a mint green background, but I'm sure you can see it. I only need a tiny drop. I'm going to use a small brush again and just paint the elements, but I will leave some of the black showing so that it still has that distressed look. It'll probably need 2 or 3 coats so that the green matches the green of the main canister. So again, I'll just move the video along. had originally been going to leave the lid in silver because it looked quite pretty, but I've decided, because of the next step that I want to do, I'm just going to make the lid blend in. So I repeated the process with the gesso and the impasto on the lid. And now for my favourite part. It's rust paste. Yes, I know I always use the rust paste, but I absolutely love it. If you prefer the look with just the black and the green, obviously don't go for the rust paste. But I just love the rust paste and the nice extra look it gives. And because I'll be wearing it with a very specific steampunk outfit, the rust is going to help it blend in with the colours in the outfit. So just dabbing it on with a small but firm brush and then spraying it with water. It's going to be kind of hard to show you this process because to let the rust run in the correct direction, I need the canister to stand up, but to let you see what I'm doing, I need to have the canister lying down. So bear with me if you can't get a great view. I'll do my best to have it at a bit of an angle that works for me and works for the video. I'm using that baby wipe to keep the worst of it off of the face from the tissue paper, but I don't mind if a little bit gets on. I just no point in having it completely covered. And I'm going to do a couple, maybe 3 small coats of the rust. Rather than try and put too much on at once, I'll just build it up, see what I think of each layer when it's dry, and decide if I want to add more. So again, I'll skip the video along and come back to you when the rust finish is sort of completed. It's a couple of little pieces that got missed where the Vaseline was and I didn't rub it off, so I'll just kind of rub them off now. Okay, so I've done all my rust and I am loving it, but I feel that some of the green highlights need to return to the sort of the lid area. So I'm just coming back with the green impasto, and this time I'll just do a little bit of dry brushing to add some of the highlights where I think I could do with seeing them again, that have gotten a little bit lost underneath the rust, but not a lot, just a few light touches. And when I've done that and it's dry, I have a nice green tassel that I found in my stash, which I'm going to add to it. Now if I'd dried that heavy body gel properly before I carried on, I wouldn't have to keep holding that flower still. But when I come back to it tomorrow, it's going to be glued nice and fast and it won't come off. And that's basically it. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it gives you some ideas for your own projects. Bye bye.